Welcome back to the show. We're so incredibly glad you decided to join us for today's deep dive.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
So our mission today is to explore the wildly creative and honestly sometimes deeply terrifying world of professional wrestling match types.
And often completely bizarre, too.
Oh, completely bizarre. We are pulling from a massive, comprehensive encyclopedia of wrestling stipulations, and I just have to tell you up front, you are in for quite a ride today.
It's definitely a subject that defies a lot of expectations. I think for most of you listening, the default image of professional wrestling is pretty straightforward, right?
Right, like two athletes in a standard ring.
Exactly. Maybe a referee, a cheering crowd, some brightly colored ropes. But as we're going to see today, that traditional setup is really just the blank canvas.
Yeah, let's unpack this immediately, because if you think it's just two people grappling on a mat, you need to buckle up.
You really do.
By the end of this deep dive, we're going to walk you through matches involving literal flesh-eating piranhas, brawls taking place on moving bullet trains traveling at 170 miles per hour,
It's insane.
and weapons crafted out of fists dipped in industrial superglue and crushed glass.
Which I know sounds like absolute unstructured chaos.
It sounds like a horror movie.
It kind of does. But what's fascinating here is that this isn't just a random list of crazy adrenaline-fueled stunts. When you really analyze these so-called gimmick matches, you uncovered this brilliant masterclass in narrative escalation.
Audience psychology, too.
Yes, audience psychology and theatrical innovation.
Right.
Every bizarre environment or ridiculous weapon you're going to hear about today was actually born out of a very specific storytelling need.
I want to start with one of the most classic examples of that narrative escalation, the steel cage.
Right, so in the encyclopedia, this falls under the category of enclosure matches.
Exactly. Now, I want you to try and picture this in your head right now. You might be visualizing the modern gleaming steel cage you see on TV today. But we have to go all the way back to the earliest recorded cage match.
Which was a long time ago.
1936, to be exact, in Caruthersville, Missouri. And the material they used was not thick steel bars.
Not even close.
The cage was constructed entirely out of chicken wire.
And the historical context of that chicken wire is actually crucial.
How so?
Well, the primary purpose wasn't actually to keep the wrestlers trapped inside, which is, the dramatic hook we associate with cage matches today.
Right. Today, it's all about there's no escape.
Exactly. But originally, it was primarily a physical barrier, just to keep the rowdy, highly aggressive fans out of the ring.
Wow. So it's for protection.
Yeah, back in those days, crowds would routinely try to interfere. They'd throw objects or even physically attack the villain wrestlers. So the chicken wire was literally there to protect the performers and the integrity of the match.
That paints such a vivid picture of what those early, gritty events must have felt like for the audience.
Oh yeah, very intense.
But of course, wrestling promoters are storytellers at heart. They realized pretty quickly that locking two bitter rivals inside a chain-link fence is just inherently dramatic for the people watching.
It really is.
So the standard steel cage evolved. It became a staple for decades. But then a problem arises.
The audience gets used to it.
Exactly. So how do promoters up the stakes when a regular cage just doesn't thrill you anymore?
Well, that brings us to 1997 and World Wrestling Entertainment, or WWE. We're talking about a massive, four-sided cuboid steel structure. It's made from this open-weave mesh. And it's so large, it actually extends beyond the ring apron and covers the floor area around the ring.
But the most significant architectural change here, it has a roof.
Yes, the roof. And before the match begins, the door is padlocked from the outside with heavy chains.
Why the roof, though? I mean, a cage is a cage.
Not from a psychological standpoint. That roof and that padlock are crucial narrative tools.
Because in a standard cage match, you can escape over the top.
Right, escaping over the top is often a way to win. By adding a roof and visibly locking the door, the promoters intentionally engineered a feeling of inescapable dread.
Okay, let's talk about kayfabe here for a second.
Sure.
Which, for those who might not know, is the agreed-upon fictional reality of the wrestling world.
Right, the internal logic of the show.
Yeah. So in kayfabe, Hell in a Cell is billed as a demonic structure. It's designed to settle the most bitter, violent blood feuds where simply pinning an opponent just isn't enough closure.
The story dictates that these two characters must be locked in a box until they absolutely destroy one another.
But see, even a locked roof over a ring eventually loses its shock value after a decade or so. Audiences are just notoriously hard to keep satisfied.
They really are.
The solution promoters came up with next just borders on architectural madness. I want you to imagine the Punjabi prison match.
This one is wild.
They replaced the steel entirely. Instead, they lowered down not one, but two concentric cages made out of thick, steel-reinforced bamboo.
Just massive structures.
The inner cage is 16 feet high. The outer cage is an enormous 20 feet high.
And both structures are topped with jagged, outward-facing wooden spikes.
Yes. And there are these tiny little doors at the bottom. The referee will only open them for exactly 60 seconds before padlocking them forever.
It is an utterly absurd, towering visual.
It is. And if bamboo isn't enough for you, other promotions have resorted to the electrified cage match, where the fence is literally wired to explode or spark in intervals.
Which, if we connect this back to the bigger picture, explains a fundamental rule of media consumption. It's really a perfect microcosm for the entertainment industry as a whole.
How do you?
Well, the dopamine hit of a standard cage wears off right. So promoters have to hack the audience's brain by adding a roof.
Right.
When the roof gets boring, you add bamboo and spikes. It's the exact same reason action movie franchises start off with car chases and eventually have to go to outer space to save the multiverse.
Oh, that is such a great point.
It's an arms race against the audience's own shifting baseline for excitement. They have to constantly maintain the illusion of ultimate danger.
An arms race against the audience? I love that framing. And sometimes the smartest way to win that arms race isn't to build a bigger, spikier cage.
No, sometimes you have to leave the building.
Exactly. It's to abandon the arena entirely. That brings us to our next category in the sources. Taking the fight to the streets and location-based brawls.
These are fascinating.
If you've ever felt claustrophobic on your morning commute, consider this. In 2023, the Japanese promotion DDT Pro Wrestling held a train match.
Yes.
They had two wrestlers fighting inside an actual moving Shinkansen bullet train traveling at 170 miles per hour.
Which represents a total departure from the boundaries of a traditional sport.
Right.
In that scenario, the environment itself becomes the primary obstacle.
Right. You have athletes trying to execute complex grappling maneuvers in a narrow train aisle while the world is literally blurring past the windows.
And wrestling has a surprisingly rich history of utilizing these utilitarian spaces.
Like the boiler room brawl.
Exactly. That was a signature match for the Mankind character in the late 90s. Fought in the bowels of the arena, among concrete floors, large bolts, steam-exposed metal piping.
And parking lot brawls, too, where wrestlers fight inside a tightly parked circle of cars using the vehicles themselves as weapons and the headlights for illumination.
It completely changes the vibe from an athletic contest to a gritty street fight.
It totally does. But reading through these sources, what I found truly amazing is that this idea of fighting in bizarre locations birthed what we now recognize as the cinematic match.
Right, taking it out of the live event space entirely.
Yeah, and the early prototype for this actually happened way back in 1987.
The Antonio Inoki match.
Yes, the legendary Japanese wrestler Antonio Inoki fought Masa Saito in a 2-hour death match on Gonryujima, which is a literal uninhabited island.
No referee.
No referee, no live crowd. They filmed it with a multi-camera setup on the ground, and they even had a helicopter filming from above.
Which was so ahead of its time.
And as the match dragged on for hours, the sun went down. They had to light bonfires on the beach just to illuminate the fight. It wasn't a live sporting event, it was basically an action movie.
It was absolutely a pioneer of the format.
Yeah.
But that cinematic approach lay mostly dormant for decades. It was really just used as an occasional novelty.
Until a massive global event forced the entire entertainment industry to adapt.
Right, the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic.
I remember that era so clearly. Sports completely shut down, and when they finally tried to come back in empty arenas, the silence was just deafening.
Exactly. With no live audiences allowed, the traditional electric energy of a wrestling show simply vanished. A performer throwing a punch in a silent, cavernous arena just looks awkward.
It's just quiet slapping sounds.
Yeah, so how do you adapt?
Yeah.
Promotions leaned into that 1987 Antonio Inoki Island concept. They started producing heavily edited, movie-like fights shot on location over several hours.
Complete with multiple takes, dramatic lighting, and actual musical scores playing underneath the action.
They leaned in so hard, and it genuinely saved the product for a lot of viewers at home.
Like WW producing the Boneyard match, that was essentially a heavily choreographed fight filmed in a custom-built foggy cemetery.
Starring The Undertaker.
Right. It felt way more like a gritty horror movie than a wrestling match.
Meanwhile, All Elite Wrestling, or AEW, went a totally different route with the Stadium Stampede.
Oh, the Stadium Stampede was wild.
Because they couldn't have fans, they utilized an entirely empty NFL stadium for a chaotic 5-on-5 brawl.
These guys were fighting in the concourses, brawling through the executive offices, sliding down the stadium bars, and battling in the cargo loading areas.
It perfectly reflects wrestling's incredible, almost unique adaptability as an art form.
It really does.
When traditional live sports shut down because they rely strictly on the rules of the game, wrestling survived because it leaned fully into its theatrical roots.
If they couldn't rely on the roar of the crowd, they just substituted it with cinematic editing, sweeping camera angles, and elaborate sets.
It proves that professional wrestling is just as much a television production as it is an athletic contest.
Okay, I need to issue a quick, very genuine content warning for you right now because things are about to get graphic.
Yeah, this next part is pretty intense.
We're transitioning away from the theatrical and the cinematic and diving into the deeply, unapologetically visceral. We need to talk about the deathmatch subculture.
This is where we examine the pursuit of pure, unadulterated shock. To really understand this, we have to look at the 1990s.
Setting the scene.
In Japan, you had promotions like FMW and Big Japan Pro Wrestling pushing the envelope. And in the United States, you had Extreme Championship Wrestling, or ECW.
Right, and ECW wasn't a massive corporate production with millions of dollars in backing.
Not at all. They were operating out of a gritty, dingy, low-ceilinged bingo hall in Philadelphia.
So to stand out against the billionaire-backed companies on national television, they had to offer a counterculture alternative.
Exactly. The death match removes almost all traditional rules. It introduces elements specifically designed to draw blood and push the human body to its absolute breaking point.
I am honestly still wincing just from reading the descriptions in the source material.
It's hard to read.
Can you explain the mechanics of the Type A deathmatch? Because it sounds like something out of a medieval torture chamber.
It is arguably one of the most harrowing concepts on paper.
Yeah.
In a Type A death match, the wrestlers have their fists heavily taped up.
Oh.
Then before the match begins, those taped fists are submerged into a bucket of industrial superglue.
Which is bad enough.
Finally, they are rolled in a tray filled with crushed glass.
Okay, stop. You're saying they are essentially turning their own hands into maces made of broken glass.
Precise.
And then punching each other in the face with them.
Yes. The visual of the glass catching the arena lights is horrifying. And if that sounds extreme, consider the light tube death match.
Oh, man, the light tubes.
In this variation, the promoters attach hundreds, sometimes up to 200 fluorescent light bulbs to the ring ropes.
So when the wrestlers are thrown into the ropes, the tubes shatter.
Right. And it's not just the sharp glass that's the issue. Shattering those tubes literally fills the air inside the arena with toxic carcinogenic dust.
That is awful.
The referees often have to wear masks, and attendants literally rush in with brooms to sweep the shattered glass off the mat so the performers don't get fully impaled when they fall.
That is deeply unsettling. But if we're talking about unsettling, there is one match in the encyclopedia that genuinely made my jaw drop.
I think I know which one you're going to say.
I want you to picture the scene. It's September 1996 in Japan. Can you walk us through the Piranha deathmatch?
Yeah. So in the center of the wrestling ring, the promoters placed a large glass fish tank.
Okay.
And inside that tank were dozens of flesh-eating Amazon River piranhas.
Oh, my God.
The stipulation was brutal and simple. The first wrestler to be fully submerged into the tank for 10 consecutive seconds loses the match.
Wait, hold on. You mean literal live piranhas?
Live piranhas.
Not rubber props, not a magic trick.
No, completely real live piranhas. And yes, a wrestler was eventually dunked inside that tank to end the match.
That is just beyond belief.
But, it challenges our fundamental assumptions about the entire industry. It raises an important question. Why go to these extremes?
Right, why subject yourself to that?
Well, the most common refrain from critics throughout history is, wrestling is fake.
Sure, you hear that all the time.
The death match is the subculture's violent, visceral response to that accusation. It provides an unforgettable spectacle that deliberately destroys the line between scripted entertainment and genuine, terrifying pain.
Because you cannot fake a laceration from a fluorescent light tube.
Exactly. You cannot fake the panic of being shoved into a tank of piranhas. It's a grim exploration of how far human beings will go to prove their authenticity when traditional holds no longer captivate a specific bloodthirsty demographic.
Man, so what does this all mean when we flip the coin? Because professional wrestling isn't purely about danger and pain.
No, definitely not.
A huge chunk of it is also incredibly goofy and surreal. Let's shift gears to the lighter, completely absurd side of wrestling logic.
The comedy matches.
I want to talk about the object on a pole match. The premise here is simple. You put an item on a pole in the corner of the ring, and the first wrestler to climb up and retrieve it can use it as a weapon.
A pretty standard setup.
Right. But World Championship Wrestling, or WCW, took this to insane extremes in the late 90s.
Wait, we need to pause there for a second. As a storytelling device, how does replacing a traditional weapon like a steel chair with completely random objects actually serve the plot?
It doesn't.
It sounds completely counterproductive to taking the athlete seriously.
It totally was counterproductive. But you have to understand the context of the Monday Night Wars.
Right, the ratings battle.
WCW was in a desperate weekly television ratings battle against WWE. They were throwing absolutely everything at the wall to see what would keep viewers from changing the channel.
So they moved away from weapons.
And started putting absurd storyline payoffs on the pole instead. We are talking about the infamous Viagra on a pole match.
Wow.
Or the absolutely legendary Judy Bagwell on a forklift match.
A forklift?
Yes. A wrestler's actual mother, Judy Bagwell, was strapped to a chair and suspended high above the ring on a piece of heavy construction equipment.
That is unbelievable.
And the winner got to rescue her. The desperation for ratings didn't stop there either. We have matches based around weird substances and pure humiliation.
Right, the substance matches.
AEW recently held a Mimosa Mayhem match where the only way to win was to physically dunk your opponent into a giant custom-built vat of champagne and orange juice.
And WWE had the hog pen match.
Yeah.
Which was fought on a farm set in an actual pen filled with deep mud and real pig excrement.
Disgusting.
But these matches tap into a very different kind of audience desire. Schadenfreude.
The joy of seeing someone arrogant get publicly humiliated.
Exactly. In American wrestling, this almost always takes a comedic, gross-out form.
It's the slapstick comedy of the sport. You have the loser wears a chicken soup match or the kiss my foot match.
Classic playground humiliation.
Our personal favorite for pure, unadulterated absurdity, the crybaby match.
Oh, no.
The loser of this match was forced to literally wear a giant adult diaper, have baby powder applied to them, and drink milk from a baby bottle in the middle of the ring while the crowd laughed.
But you know, this raises an absolutely fascinating point about cultural context.
How so?
While American wrestling uses these goofy humiliation tactics for a quick laugh, if we travel to Mexico and look at Lucha Libre, we see something entirely different.
Okay, let's talk about Mexico.
In Lucha Libre, they have a match type called luchas de apuestas, which translates to gambling fights. This is where masked wrestlers wager their masks against one another.
Right, the classic mask versus mask match. I feel like we see masks in American wrestling as just cool merchandising tools.
And in American wrestling, yes, it is basically just merchandise. But you have to understand that in Mexico, a luchador's mask is practically a religious artifact.
It's that serious.
It is sacred heritage. Losing a mask is not a comedy routine involving a diaper. It is the highest possible stakes a performer can face.
Wow.
It is a profound cultural and professional disgrace. When a Mexican wrestler loses a mask match, they must unmask in the center of the ring.
Right there in front of everyone.
Often their real name, their hometown, and their personal information is published in the newspapers for the very first time. They can never, ever wrestle under that mask persona again.
That is heavy.
It really shows you how the concept of losing face varies wildly depending on the culture you're standing in.
Definitely.
In one context, humiliation is wearing a chicken suit for laughs. In another, it is the solemn, heartbreaking loss of a secret identity you have fiercely protected for your entire career.
That contrast is so stark, and it really elevates the whole art form when you view it through that cultural lens.
It really does.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to pull all these wild threads together for you. We have traveled from 1930s chicken wire to bamboo cages.
From grappling on moving bullet trains to dodging flesh-eating piranhas.
And we've seen everything from baby diapers to sacred career-ending masks.
The big picture here, the real takeaway from this encyclopedia of stipulations, is that professional wrestling match types are essentially a funhouse mirror of human psychology.
A funhouse mirror. I like that.
Whether it's the profound cultural weight of a mask versus mask wager in Mexico, the breathtaking athletic stunt work required in a ladder match, or the sheer chaotic lunacy of fighting in a boiler room with exposed steam pipes.
They all share a common thread.
Yes, they all rely on our fundamental human desires. They tap into our need for grand spectacle, our craving for clear narrative closure to complex conflicts, and as we discussed with the steel cages, our relentless demand for constant sensory escalation.
I really want you to think about that the next time you sit down to watch any piece of media. Whether you're watching a massive Hollywood blockbuster action movie, a tense prestige drama, or even a trashy reality TV show, pay close attention to the environment.
Look at how the space is used.
Exactly. Ask yourself how the environment is dictating the story. Is the setting designed to make the characters feel claustrophobic like a locked cage?
Or is the location designed to escalate their conflict like a gritty boiler room?
Because the techniques wrestling uses to manipulate our emotions through these bizarre gimmick matches are the exact same tools used by every director and storyteller on screen.
It's entirely about matching the physical space to the emotional stakes of the narrative. When the hatred between two characters reaches a boiling point, a standard 20 by 20 ring is simply no longer big enough to contain it.
Beautifully said. And that leaves us with one final lingering question for you to ponder as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
If professional wrestling has spent the last century constantly inventing new, wilder ways to simulate human conflict, evolving from basic mats to bamboo cages to speeding trains to literal vats of piranhas, what does that say about us?
That is the real question.
What does that say about our insatiable appetite as consumers for increasingly extreme, novel, or dangerous forms of entertainment?
Where exactly is the line between compelling storytelling and pure sensory overload?
And as an audience, will we ever actually cross it? Something to mull over. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us, and we'll catch you next time.